Another difficult type of endgame is rook and bishop versus a rook. Normally speaking, it's a draw, but it's a pretty hard one. If you're on the rook side, I don't envy you. I have been, and it wasn't fun. White can try a lot of tricks, and you have to be very careful not to fall into it. This position on the board right now is still a draw, if black plays accurately. Black here should play rook f6, trying to keep white's king away from the 6th rank. Black's plan should be, after that, trying to rescue the king from the edge of the board. For example, after king d4, rook d6, king e5, and then rook d7. Of course, trading rooks would equal draw. Therefore, now white must avoid that. For example, rook a8 check, and then king c7. Try to be on the other side than where the white king is. Not opposite, but on a diagonal opposite from the white king in this case. And now, after another check, the king could just go back to d8 with an objectively drawn position. However, I warn you, it could be still a lot of sweating if white tries real hard, but objectively it's a draw. This is just a sample example of the dangers that black needs to face in this position. Here, with white to move, white is winning the following way. Rook moves to b4. Now, white is threatening to check with the bishop, forcing the king to d8, and then checkmate in 2 moves after rook b8. Unfortunately for black, there's not much they can do about it. They can try to escape right away with the idea that after rook b8 check, they would block with rook c8. However, white has a very tricky winning move here, cutting the rook off with bishop c4 and renewing that threat of rook b8 checkmate. The only way not to give up the rook and get away from the checkmate is playing king c8, but then again bishop e6 and king d8, rook b8 wins for white. A couple of tips about rook endgames. In general, it is better to keep the rook behind the pawn rather than in front or on the side. Whether it comes to your own pawn that you're trying to support to become a queen, or your opponent's pawn that you're trying to stop from becoming one. Also, another important tip, usually try to keep your rook far away from the king you're trying to check. The further they are from each other, the more checks you have, and the better it will be.